Hello everyone and welcome back to a brand new video and welcome to round 1 of season 2 of our F125 Aston Martin driver career mode. Yes, we're back this weekend here in Albert Park, Australia for the start of the Australian Grand Prix. Of course, if you missed out on the video that went live a couple of days ago from Abu Dhabi, I would highly recommend going back and checking it out. The season finale, Lando Norris versus Max Verstappen for the World Championship. Myself versus Charles Leclerc versus Oscar Piastri in the battle for P3, and it was Lando Norris that ended up coming out on top by the end of the season. Just, as you can see, 2 points ahead of Verstappen. Max had a bit of a disastrous race, contact with myself early on, and then never was able to recover. Lando Norris, he had to win that GP, and he returned to the top step of the podium for only the second time all year after the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix very, very early on. The Dutchman, I think you would argue, was probably a little bit more consistent over the course of the campaign, but Lando Norris won it when it counts, and therefore was able to hang on. We also were able to hang on to P3 in the World Championship as well, so I'm feeling fairly confident as we head into Season 2. Now, I was going to do a pre-season testing video ready for Season 2, but ultimately there was only 2 moves inside this career mode. They were rather insane, though. Franco Colapinto replaced Lewis Hamilton at Ferrari. Hamilton's gone to Red Bull alongside Max Verstappen, so we're finally getting arguably one of the most hyped up ever teammate lineups in Formula 1. Lewis Hamilton, Max Verstappen, they're together this year, and if Red Bull can't win the Constructors' Championship, well then they've only got themselves to blame, because those two are going to be absolutely rapid. Excited to see what Colapinto can do in the Ferrari as well. I'm hoping ready for Season 3, we can see a few more driver moves as well. When it comes to vehicle performance, we are now ahead of Ferrari though, in the standings as well, not far behind Mercedes, Red Bull, or McLaren as we head into this new season. I've got the high inflation kind of mod R&D scenario implemented inside the game as well, so hopefully that's going to make things very, very interesting as we make our way through. But of course, yeah, if you're new around here, make sure you get yourself subscribed. We are mighty close to 11k subs on the channel as well. Yeah, back in Albert Park though, nobody has any idea as to how things are going to go. We have got a slightly changed calendar as well that I must quickly run through as well before I forget. So fairly standard early on. I've ditched the Chinese Grand Prix though this season, so we head from Australia straight to Japan, Bahrain, and then Saudi Arabia before we've obviously got the Miami Sprint, Imola, Monaco, Spain, Canada as normal. We've got the reverse Austrian Grand Prix, followed up by the normal Austrian Grand Prix, reverse Silverstone after the real British Grand Prix as well. Just like in the normal career mode, I've replaced Zandvoort with the reverse layout, because I think the reverse circuit is absolutely fantastic. But unlike the My Team career mode, the reverse Grand Prix for Austria and Silverstone, they are going to be their own standalone events inside this game as well. But yeah, I think we're ready then to return here to Albert Park. We bagged a podium on debut here last year, but this season we want to fight for the World Championship.
And a warm welcome, everybody. We're here in the heart of Melbourne. It's Albert Park, and it's qualifying for the Australian Grand Prix.
Well, towards the end of last season then, let's not forget, in those last 3 Grand Prix, in every single one of them, we fought for victory right towards the end of the GP. Obviously in Vegas, Charles Leclerc screwed me over. In Qatar, we had that little incident earlier on, which ultimately cost us the few seconds we needed to try and get around Verstappen at the front of the order. And then, of course, in Abu Dhabi, Lando Norris was just on a bit of a better strategy than me, and, you know, was driving like a man possessed towards the end of the afternoon. But 3 Grand Prix that we could have won all of them, so we do actually come into this new season with a lot of momentum. The car underneath me as well feels absolutely fantastic. Feels like we've got a good platform to build on as well, so really hoping this season we can try and deliver some big results. I think we should be in the World Championship fight, as long as we can kick on a little bit better. You know, it was kind of the first half of the year where we struggled a bit on quite a few occasions to really pick up the points we needed. But yeah, I reckon this season, though, we will hopefully be right in that fight there as Fernando Alonso try and claim a huge slipstream from our teammate there down in towards the final couple of corners. Still need to make sure that we're working well with the Spaniard. He's still clearly the #1 driver, according to the team, though. I think I've got 35% swing now on all voting decisions and things like that. So we're still not bringing in much in that regard, but hopefully this year we're going to be able to try and slowly shift the team's momentum my way, and we're going to kickstart our first lap. We only go 8th. Well, so far then, Oscar Piastri at his home Grand Prix, top of the board, only half a second clear of myself. So Ferrari, Red Bull, McLaren, all of those teams in the fight up at the front of the order, but we've got one more lap then to really try and get this hooked up and try to get a big time on the board there immediately. Just see finding a bit more confidence through turn 1. Yeah, luckily that rain isn't going to be a problem in our qualifying session. I'm keeping it with the short qualifying format. I do quite enjoy it inside the game. It kind of strikes a good balance of allowing some surprises, but ultimately not quite as crazy as one-shot qualifying. Also, the AI in one-shot always seem to be very, very good as well there. But I think the big thing we need to do is just find a little bit more, use a little bit more of our battery as well around the course of the lap. 4/10 up by the time we get to the end of Sector 2. As I mean, feel the grip through there. One downshift through the first part, and then we've got the grip to get it hooked up. Haven't seen any more improvements coming in from our top runners, but that doesn't mean that we aren't seeing some more PBs. Just haven't seen a new fastest lap up at the top of the board, as we are out of the top 10 at the moment. So everybody improving as the circuit ramps up. A little bit tight over that final corner curb, but as we get the power down out of that final corner, 7/10 up then. Is this going to be pole position to kickstart the year? P3, so close. Well, take a look at that then. Oscar Piastri will be on the pole, ready for the season opening Australian Grand Prix. Hamilton, though, on his debut for Red Bull, will line up alongside him. We end up 3rd, just ahead of Carlos Sainz. Charles Leclerc in P5. 5 cars from 5 different teams, separated by just 1/10 of a second at the end of the season opening qualifying. That is utterly insane. Alex Albon just ahead of Max Verstappen. Norris will be disappointed down in P8, just ahead of Andrea Kimi Antonelli and Nico Hülkenberg. Easily, though, the biggest shock in my mind. 1, Franco Colapinto down in P17 in his Ferrari, but Fernando Alonso P15 as well in the second Aston Martin car. That has been a big disappointment for him, but we've got a lot of work to do as we get into the race.
Months of rumour and speculation all come to an end today as we return to racing for the opening event of what promises to be an enthralling season. Welcome along then to round 1 of this year's Formula 1 World Championship. We go racing today then in the state of Victoria, where the drivers have 14 corners and 3.28 miles to navigate at an average lap speed of around 120 miles per hour. The close proximity of the barriers make accidents inevitable, and recent history shows us that a safety car is not at all out of the question. It's time to see how our drivers are stacking up after yesterday's exciting qualifying session. Oscar Piastri lines up on pole position, and Lewis Hamilton completes the front row. Considering the rest of the grid, we have Mr. Monaco, Sainz, Charles Leclerc and Albon, Verstappen, Norris, Antonelli and Nico Hülkenberg, Russell, Behrman, Esteban Ocon, Doohan, Fernando Alonso, Lawson, Franco Colapinto and Pierre Gasly. Hadjar and Gabriel Bortoleto rounds off the grid. Now it's almost time for lights out, so let's go down to the track. Alongside me here in the commentary box today, former racing driver extraordinaire Naomi Schiff. As much as I like testing, and I do love testing, and I've really enjoyed the build-up here and all the speculation, I really want to see some action. And finally today, we get some proper action on the track.
This is always such an exciting time in the season. First of all, it's the first time they'll be racing their new cars. So that's always an exciting thing for drivers to look forward to. But also, they've had a long time off during the winter break. So it's about dusting the cobwebs off, getting the rust off of their bones, and really getting their elbows out there and having some fun.
Okay, here we go. I know what you can do. Don't let me down.
Well, here we are then, down on the grid, ready for the season opening Australian Grand Prix. A lot of excitement, a lot of intrigue, but Oscar Piastri, he will look to try and claim victory to kickstart his World Championship here. 29 laps ahead of us. The medium to the hard seems to be the way to go, and I think most races this season are probably going to be that way, but we'll have to wait and see as to what happens. Can Oscar win at home? Can Lewis Hamilton win on debut for Red Bull? The 5 red lights are on. And it's the lights out, and away we go then. And Hamilton immediately getting a good start in that Red Bull car, and immediately having a look to the inside of Oscar Piastri, in towards someone there. The Australian, though, swoops around his outside, as we have got Carlos Sainz there down my inside at turn 1 as well. We will hang on to P3, and looks like most of our front runners then have stayed where they started. Oscar Piastri just wants to try and settle down, get into a rhythm nice and early on here, and just try to keep Lewis Hamilton at bay through these first few corners. So we actually just rattle up against the wall there ever so slightly. Already, just looking at the gap, seems like Charles Leclerc maybe on the back foot a little bit here early on, and Hamilton maybe now a little bit vulnerable to our Aston Martin as well by the time we head out onto the back straight. Of course, we all know this circuit is going to be about ERS management this afternoon, but of course everybody, you know, as these cars get quicker and quicker, should have a little bit more ERS to play with as well, as tucked up in the wheel tracks of the Red Bull car there. I've only just got used to saying Hamilton in a Ferrari inside F1 25. How on earth now am I meant to talk about him in a Red Bull as well? Utterly bizarre, Hamilton's end of Formula 1 career arc, but maybe, just maybe, Red Bull can give him a World Championship there. He's immediately kicking out the back end through that final corner. But yeah, fairly stable up at the front. Oscar Piastri leads at the end of lap 1. Also then already maybe dropping out of the DRS though of Oscar Piastri just in front of him. So let's see if we can try and get a run to the outside of the Red Bull man there. Use that DRS. And I think, yeah, Hamilton realised that probably wasn't a fight worth having this early on in the GP. As always, this Aston Martin very, very good through the high-speed corners. You can see we immediately close in on Oscar Piastri a little bit as well. Here we go then, surely Oscar Piastri is going to be a little bit of a sitting duck as well then. So obviously we've got DRS, he's got nothing to try and defend himself, as we've got yellows out towards the rear of the field. That looks to be a V-carb then already out of this Grand Prix, as we will get around the outside of the Australian. A little bit of a wobble through the second part of the chicane. Is that Isaac Hadjar? Yes, it is, out of the Grand Prix. So disappointment for the Frenchman. Not the way he would have wanted to kickstart the new season. Well, there is that stricken V-carb, but I'm much more interested in the gap to Hamilton then at the moment, as he is almost dropping out of the DRS range early on in this race. As you can see, Oscar Piastri there just staying within a second of myself. But Hamilton, yeah, really, really struggling and might now be vulnerable to Carlos Sainz, of course, the man that he replaced at Ferrari. Sainz, of course, did really, really well here last season in that Williams car. Fought for a podium throughout most of the Grand Prix, so I'm sure he'll be looking to try and do the same again. So, come on, we've just got to try and keep this thing in check. Well, there we go. We might just have got Piastri out of the DRS range here. I don't know whether it was over a second by the time we got through the detection point. And I think, yeah, look at that. The gap's actually going up then. So as Hamilton and Sainz continue to squabble a little bit further behind, Oscar and I have just been able to break away from them, but I've been able to break away from the Australian. A lot of pace, a lot of potential in this car early on. Imagine if we kickstart the year with a win. Well, they always say the home crowd advantage provides you with a couple of extra tenths of a second, and Oscar Piastri... Oh, that was a bit awkward. I was hoping we could try and switch him on the exit of the corner, but clearly you saw that one coming. But Piastri making his way back through then, so just when I thought we had a little margin of safety, Oscar Piastri reminds me, you know, a new season, a fresh start for everybody. Could this be the year he fights for a championship? I think he was very disappointed with how last season went. Showed glimmers of brilliance in that McLaren, but far too many weekends went away from him. The Sainz now, yeah, comfortably ahead of Hamilton. Imagine if we saw Williams fighting for a championship. That would be great. Come on then, Oscar Piastri again. We're going to try and get a run around the outside of him. And I mean, we've just got to be a little bit strategic here and try to work together. Around the outside we will go. Yeah, just got to be careful here because we have got a big lead. We have clearly got the pace over everybody else. But, of course, we want to make sure that we work out each other's strengths and weaknesses, but also don't want to fall back into the pack. As we get closer and closer towards the pit window then, I think Oscar Piastri maybe just worked his car a little bit too hard here, too early, to try and keep up with us, because he seems to be really struggling. One thing I've got to manage, though, is actually rear tyre temperature. You can see that front left is just on the on the cusp of overheating early on in this GP. We've built up a nice little cushion ahead of Oscar Piastri again, but you know what? He might come back at me once more. But we just need to try and get these tyres to the end of lap 12, and that might not be so easy. There we go, tyre wear warning light now has just flashed up as we get towards the end of lap 11. So you need to take these tyres one more lap. I think the hards should be okay, because obviously they run a bit cooler, so shouldn't overheat at all. And what you tend to find is when the tyres start overheating, the wear just kind of increases. Like, it doesn't feel bad at all, but just the wear is higher, despite the fact you haven't really changed your driving style. But honestly, looking down the order at the moment, yeah, Oscar Piastri has really dropped away. It's actually Carlos Sainz that looks very, very quick in that Williams. Hamilton, I think, went too aggressive too early as well in that Red Bull and is now trying to limp to the first round of stops. Alonso, he's battling at the rear of the field. I'm not sure how. So the pits we will go then at the end of lap 12. So feel like we've done a pretty good job looking after the tyres to make sure that we got them here quite comfortably. Oh, you moron. 51 on pit lane entry. I cannot believe I've just done that. By 1 mile an hour. Well, suddenly then, this race has been made a lot more difficult. And we've got to really hope that we don't end up with a safety car or anything like that then. Oh, hello. Kimi Antonelli's just crashed into me as I'm trying to get out of the pit lane. What's Antonelli doing? Utter moment of madness there from Kimi Antonelli, as he will hang on to the place from Jack Doohan, but has clearly damaged his wing quite badly in the process. No idea what that was about, as we will make sure we get down the inside of the Mercedes and try and run away from him.
Let's try to be consistent with it going forward, please.
Well, hopefully that front wing damage isn't going to cost us too much either, but 30 seconds of chaos then here in Albert Park, and we have faced the brunt of it. Jack Doohan, I think his car's alright, he's just struggling a little bit towards the end of the stint, but he's doing a pretty good job kind of fighting up and around the points. Hopefully we can try and get around him now, though, as down the inside we'll go. Got a huge run on the Alpine, and up into 10th we go again. Oh, we are going to see a load more cars into the pit lane then at the end of lap 13, so yeah, we're definitely struggling a little bit here with the tyre management relative to some of the AI, but we are going to get a huge jump on the cars that we need to. Got to try and line up a run on George Russell out of turn 2. And there we go, we've done a pretty good job there. To the outside of the Mercedes we'll go. They seem to be really, really struggling here in the season opener. But when do they... Well, say, in the My Team career mode, they're doing very well now. In driver career mode, terribly. We're about to see the rest of our runners into the pit lane then. I mean, Hamilton, in the space of like 4 laps here, seems to have lost most of the pit stop to me. Oscar Piastri coming in as well, so he's going to be a long way back. But an 18.8 then, new fastest lap of the day. Leclerc, though, has just quietly brought himself up into, I believe, net P2 now of the GP, and there we go. So, Charles Leclerc, that was another one I was going to mention. Of course, looked very, very strong towards the end of last season. I think in the last 3 Grand Prix, it must have been myself and Charles that scored the most points out of anybody. So could we be the 2 championship rivals? Well, there we go, Max Verstappen then. Haven't spoke much about him so far this season, but seems to have climbed his way up through the order and is now battling with his teammate Lewis Hamilton in this GP. I'm just trying to monitor the gap to Leclerc. It's floating at about 8 seconds. Now, on the one hand, obviously we know this car was very, very quick towards the end of last stint. On the other, I'm kind of hoping they all trip over each other so we can have a little bit more of a buffer. A safety car, a red flag, anything like that could completely screw us over in this GP in towards the final third. So I'm just hoping we've got a bit of a gap in case I need to use it. Verstappen is flying along, another new fastest lap of the day, and he might well get within our 10-second barrier by the end of the GP. Annoyingly for us as well, I think Carlos Sainz has just dropped away from Charles Leclerc, so effectively now, this is a hot lapping exercise between Charles and I towards the end of the afternoon. I still haven't forgiven him for Las Vegas, so I'm going to try and do everything within my power to make sure he does not win this race today. But it might be a sad, sad decline for Carlos Sainz towards the end of the afternoon. At one point here, looked like he could potentially take victory. But I think he might be confined now, just trying to hang on to Oscar Piastri's coattails towards the end of the afternoon, as Hamilton and Verstappen still keep swapping places a little bit further back. So already that rivalry seems to be heating up. I'm very, very intrigued to see how they both get on over the course of the year. Is Hamilton Red Bull's answer to finally getting a good number 2 within the organisation? Certainly quite an expensive way to do it, but should work for them here, as Leclerc now, that gap up to almost 9 seconds. So I think Leclerc just trying to focus on the long game, but I want to get that gap up to 10 and then just try and keep it there. Oh, we've got yellows. I think that's Lando Norris. Just like we saw last season, Lando Norris retired from the Australian Grand Prix. And is it happening again? Yes, it is. Our reigning world champion out here in Albert Park, and I'm just praying that that doesn't give us a safety car, doesn't give us a red flag late on in the afternoon. I think we're going to be okay. I think if they were going to call it, they would have called it by now, as the gap to Leclerc now 9.9 seconds. We've got 5 laps to try and claw another 1/10 of a second over him. Into the final few laps then. I mean, I've just got one eye glued the top left-hand side of my screen. The gap to Leclerc, though, now up to 10.5 seconds, so we have got the gap where we need it. And I think Charles here is just struggling to manage his tyres towards the end of the afternoon, because Piastri and Carlos Sainz have both closed back in. But even Verstappen and Hamilton now, not a million miles away either. I'm happy for them all to fight behind me. I'm not going to complain if that's how the end of this race pans out here. But as we make our way in towards the final few corners, 3 more laps to go. Even with a penalty, can anything stop us this afternoon? Oh, there we go, Leclerc. He has fallen back into the clutches of Oscar Piastri here. And could the Australian still try and form a little bit of a late race charge? Surely he's going to have a look past Charles Leclerc this time around to the inside. And Leclerc, I don't think, even fought that one. Oscar Piastri back up into P2. But if they work together, could they bring that gap down just a little bit? Oh, 1 lap to go then, and Oscar Piastri, he's now even broke away from Leclerc. And in fact, Sainz now, Charles Leclerc's former teammate, has found a way around him with just 1 more lap then. So I think Leclerc, his tyres must have completely hit the cliff towards the end of this GP. Little bit nervous. Oscar Piastri has made good ground on me here inside the final couple of laps, and I'm sure McLaren would have told him what the sit rep is. 6/10 of a second, that is what he needs on this final lap of the race today. But will Leclerc even be able to hang on for a podium?
Behind, 42.5 seconds.
We have averaged going near enough 1.5 seconds a lap faster than Fernando Alonso throughout this race today, so our teammate desperately needs to go back to the drawing board and work out just what has gone wrong for him. 10.2 seconds now, the gap to Oscar Piastri. He is not giving up on these final laps of the GP there. He knows an opportunity for a home race win is waiting for him if he can get the power down, if he can get a move on, as our tyres have hit the cliff on this final lap there, nice and tidy through the chicane. We don't need to take any risk at the moment. At very worst, it would be P2, but I want to start the season with a victory. We came so close so many times towards the end of last year. I am not letting 1 mile an hour be the difference come the checkered flag today. Through the final corners here in Albert Park, Australia. Is it going to be enough to claim victory ahead of the home hero? We'll have to wait and see when we get to the line. I think so.
Absolutely awesome. Just amazing, mate. Well done.
We've witnessed some great battles on the streets of Melbourne today then, and they've taken a fantastic win.
To take the win at the first race of the season, now that is important. You get straight in to your competitor's head, and they now know that you are the one to beat.
The Aston Martin team will be very happy with today's performance. And of course, the final result. Another display of excellent driving and excellent teamwork. And a well-deserved first-place finish.
Well, there we are then from the P3 on the grid. Despite a 10-second time penalty, we have done enough here in Albert Park, Australia, to claim the first victory of the new season by just 0.3 of a second ahead of Oscar Piastri. Give the Australian one more lap, I honestly think he would have done it there, but the difference maker for me has to have been that undercut we got on lap 12. Despite Andrea Kimi Antonelli trying to crash into me, luckily, yeah, it was enough of the difference that we were able to walk away with the victory. Carlos Sainz, though, a brilliant podium in third, just ahead of Verstappen, who came alive towards the end of the GP. Leclerc and Hamilton, I have to go back to the drawing board, work out what went wrong. With Albon, Russell, Alonso did end up P9, just ahead of Jack Doohan, so it was actually a better recovery by my teammate than I originally thought there. Doohan beats out Gasly, Franco Colapinto on a two-stop strategy for whatever reason around this circuit, just ahead of Esteban Ocon and Andrea Kimi Antonelli, with just Lando Norris and Isaac Hadjar, who both failed to see the checkered flag. Championship-wise, of course, the race results are drivers' standings. Constructors-wise, Aston Martin lead Williams in P2 there. Red Bull in third, ahead of McLaren, Ferrari, and Mercedes there, with Alpine also on the board. Just Haas, V-Carb and Kick Sauber, who failed to score after the opening race of the new season. Thank you all so much for watching. If you have enjoyed, please do make sure to leave a like, get yourself subscribed. We are in this championship fight this season. I want to claim that crown.